In my personal life, the pandemic has been a wonderful change. Excuse me. In my personal life, the pandemic has been a wonderful change because I commute and travel everywhere. I've been commuting from my home for over 36 years. And so being home in the forest where I live with the streams and the water all around me has been really wonderful. And even though I love traveling, being in the same place for over a year is really quite remarkable. With that said, of course, it's been very difficult for many people. For me, in regards to moving my practice completely remotely through telehealth, has had its challenges, of course, but because I've been working internationally through my international training program since 2012, I feel like I had a good foundation about how to work and think about translating our work. The most important part for me is really still looking at that lens from nonverbal communication and really understanding what am I seeing through the frame of the computer nonverbally. It's made me have to pay attention to more micro movements and macro movements in a different way than I would necessarily when I'm in the same room. I'm still paying attention to my felt experience, my own what I call embodied countertransference, witnessing, kinesthetic seeing, kinesthetic empathy. I deeply attune to my response as I'm watching that person on the screen. I pay a lot of attention to where they place themselves and where I place myself. There's an intimacy that you can have with the screen that you won't necessarily have in person, because of course you're going to stay further away. So I'm trying to focus on the details that I'm receiving from this medium and seeing it as a different medium to work rather than a comparison to in person. Nonetheless, what I have seen with the pandemic and the theme of the pandemic, what that has brought is that anyone that's had kind of what I call like a little crack in their emotional self, kind of their concerns, has become a huge crevice for many people. Issues and emotional difficulties, unsettled, unresolved issues, especially if they have to do with attachment and safety, right? I like Steve Porges's work, the polyvagal theory, quite a lot. And this whole idea that our neuroceptive system is constantly trying to perceive safety and danger. And the pandemic, especially the international level of it, has created such concerns about safety on such a deep level. And so people that have unresolved themes related to that, it's become a cavern, not just a little crack in their system, but a cavern. With that said, again, I'm always looking at the instead of looking at it as either or, looking at it as both and. What are some of the benefits? Well, especially with some of the children I'm working with, children on the spectrum, children with attachment issues, children with learning difficulties, the comfort of being in their home, the comfort of knowing where their parent is because they're nearby, that's actually for many children been an asset. Of course, there's the difficulty of learning online for some, but the factors for those that have issues with regulation, with social situations, with understanding social cues and things in group settings, those issues have been alleviated a bit during this pandemic because they're in the comfort of their home with their animals and their pets. I was just sharing with Julia as well. You know, I have a cat and my cat joins my sessions many times. And so there's been a familiarity and intimacy that I've created with certain children and adults that I'm working with in a way that I never would have. You know, one session I had with an adult that was really having a really hard time being stuck in her New York City apartment. And I brought her through my garden. And we got to look at all the flowers and the stream and the things that I have in my garden, the little frog pond I have. And the same thing with children, things I would have never done before. But I've created a whole scenario with some of my stuffed animals and now a whole animated series that I'm producing about being in the woods with animals. Kids love animals. And so there have been ways that I've had to open up my creativity and children, working with children's imagination. So for example, I have this little chime ball.
Oh, yeah.
And we play this game where I rock the chime ball. This is something I would always do in person with the children, where we have to rock the chime ball, not shake it at the end of the session to see if they can stay regulated. And then I pass it to them.
Yeah.
And then yes, there you are. Exactly. That's what it is. And then I imitate them with it in their hand, right? Just like you and I are doing. And then I have them pass it back to me. So then you bring it back up to the screen. There you are. And now I have it. And so we've played all kinds of games, throwing balls back and forth. And we had to really use our imagination. And children love to use their imagination. The other amazing thing is I've gotten so many house tours. So many people, adults and kids, talk to me about their homes and their cozy spots or things that have happened in their house, and they get to show them to me. So I've really embraced this experience because it's what we had, and I'm grateful that there were ways for us to connect. So what are the long-term effects? It's too early to know. Are some children going to end up, is this going to really disturb their sense of safety long-term? Are they going to have more separation issues long-term? Sure, I bet some will. And then some will learn from it and build their resilience from it. And they'll learn how that was a time and they navigated through it. They feel triumphant and proud, and then they move through it. So we're going to see all those spectrums, I'm sure. Yeah, I think that attachment styles are becoming very apparent during this time. And of course, the biggest concern is to look for those that have very insecure attachments, maybe that are very clingy, for example. Those dynamics are going to really show up when we try to move back to a more integrated social life, when we feel safe for being out. And so those children that have those really anxiety invoked attachments where they don't feel safe outside of the family, that's going to probably be exacerbated as they try to transition back out. On the other hand, I think the other thing we have to really watch out for is so many parents are so stressed right now in all the requirements of working. So many families are full-time workers. And so I think there's also a level of rejection that has probably happening in a deeper way than has happened in the past. It's become more apparent because parents are at their wits' ends and kids are at their wits' ends, especially those living in cities where they can't go out as much. And so we're going to have to provide for that. I mean, that's why I'm creating this series, to help families children find ways to engage nonverbally through their bodies and through dancing, even in small spaces, because we still need these outlets. And so we have to learn how to accommodate. So I think that the attachment themes and attachment theories are really as important now, even more than ever, because we really want us to understand and look for those nonverbal clues that are going to help us see when a child may be displaying some real issues, or the parent-child dynamic displays a lot of the stress and frustration that is being created due to the guidelines we have to follow in the pandemic. The piece that's really standing out right now is the embodied countertransference piece for therapists, for us to pay attention to our thoughts, the images, what's coming up for us, parallel to the people we're working with. While we're working with them, what are our body sensations, the emotions that are coming up, and really sieving through, are they ours? Do we own them as ours? Are they creating a bias of how we're then interpreting what's going on with the family we're working with, the child or the adult? So that part of my and ARC acronym I have, everyone needs to be seen, heard, held, and hugged. And we have to attend to what we see happening, reflect on what it means to us and for that person, and then connect back. That and attend, reflect, connect. Those themes, that's kind of in a nutshell, the whole aspect of my approach that I think is so important. I have to do that more than ever now, and really pay attention to self and other, and look at what is that lens, what am I bringing to the situation due to my experience right now with the pandemic, and be careful that I'm not projecting onto them, and stay clear of what are they presenting and what are they showing in their nonverbal behaviors, even regarding where they are in the screen, for example. I have some patients that put like that, you know, what this is, I have to have a whole session like that, or a little kid that's moving it all over the place. And what does that tell me about how it feels to be in their body? Or they walk around holding it with me. So I'm even feeling the pace of their presence and how they're moving in their space. So,
so that actually gives tools to work even online, even with this challenged.
Right. And when they turn off their screen, you know, some kids play like this. So then I'll play peekaboo. Where are you? You know? Yeah. And that often gets them to want to show who they are. So I look at everything as another way to be creative, to engage rather than an obstacle. It's all information.
And that's exactly so what you said.